Put your hands up. I said, put your hands up. The words ripped through the air like a siren. In the middle of aisle 7, surrounded by cereal boxes and yogurt cups, a young white police officer stood trembling with tension, a service pistol gripped tight in his hands. The fluorescent lights above reflected off the barrel, casting a cold glint on the polished steel. At the other end of the gun was a middle-aged black man, hands raised slowly to shoulder height, his face caught between shock and disbelief. David Hayes stood frozen. He wasn't shouting, wasn't moving, just standing there like he'd stepped into the wrong universe. The man holding the gun didn't know who he was. And that, right there, was the most dangerous part, because what he saw wasn't an innocent man holding a shopping cart. He saw a threat, a suspect, someone to neutralize. Shoppers nearby scattered behind displays or ducked behind counters. Cell phones began recording. The supermarket had gone from mundane to madness in a matter of seconds. And David? He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just looked the officer dead in the eye and said, with quiet control, "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding." But that only made things worse. Now you're probably wondering, what led to this? Why is a federal agent being treated like a criminal in broad daylight? And how did this moment become a turning point for everyone involved? Well, for that, we need to go back a little. To understand the man standing in that supermarket aisle, hands raised and heart pounding, you've got to know where he came from, who he really is. David Hayes wasn't just some guy who walked in off the street. He was a 45-year-old veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a man who had spent nearly 2 decades chasing organized crime, dismantling terror cells, and solving the kind of cases most folks only read about in newspapers. He wore a badge with pride, not for the power it gave him, but for the responsibility that came with it. David was born and raised in Maywood, North Carolina, a small town with quiet streets, good people, and just enough racial tension to remind you where you were. He grew up in a working-class black family, the kind where you didn't complain, you just kept pushing. His mother worked nights as a nurse's aide. His father did odd jobs and taught him how to shake a man's hand with strength and look him in the eye. David learned early on that respect wasn't given, it was earned. He was smart, focused, never got into trouble. While other kids were running the streets, David was hitting the books, working towards something bigger. He got into college on a scholarship and later into Quantico on grit and talent alone. By the time he turned 30, he was already known inside the Bureau as the guy you called when the job got messy. He was calm under fire, steady in storms, and he never once forgot where he came from. So when David Hayes walked into that Maywood supermarket to pick up groceries for his wife, he wasn't thinking about his resume. He was just being a husband, a neighbor, a man. But for Officer Jenkins, that wasn't what he saw. Mark Jenkins had only been with the Maywood Police Department for a little over a year, but you'd think he'd been patrolling the streets since birth the way he carried himself. Early 20s, clean-shaven, and always a little too quick to reach for his badge when no one was asking. He came from a different part of the state, one not known for its diversity, and like too many young men handed a gun and a title before they have earned the wisdom to wield either, Jenkins walked with the kind of arrogance that comes from never having been challenged. He didn't know Maywood, not really, didn't understand its people, its neighborhoods, its history. He saw the world in categories, good guys and bad guys, threats and non-threats. And to him, a black man standing alone in a grocery store aisle, that was enough to raise an eyebrow, maybe even a weapon. That Saturday, Jenkins wasn't responding to a call. There was no reported crime, no suspect description. He was just on patrol, walking the aisles of the supermarket in his uniform, letting his presence be felt. And when he spotted David, calm, casual, minding his business, that's when the switch flipped. Something about David's presence rubbed him the wrong way. Maybe it was the confidence. Maybe it was the way David didn't flinch under his gaze, or maybe it was just his skin. Jenkins didn't ask himself why he felt the way he did. He didn't need a reason. In his mind, suspicion was justification enough. And so he walked toward David Hayes, hand on his belt, voice tightening, ready to make a scene that would change everything. "Hey, you, stop right there." The words cut through the quiet hum of the supermarket like a warning bell. David turned slowly, one hand still holding a box of cereal. He blinked, confused. A young officer, face tight with suspicion, was staring him down like he just robbed the place. There was no reason, no explanation, just hostility. David set the cereal box back on the shelf and answered calmly, "Yes, officer. Can I help you?" Jenkins didn't respond with a greeting. No badge number, no explanation, just that cold, clipped tone. "What are you doing here?" he barked, as if being in a supermarket on a Saturday afternoon required permission. David hesitated. "I'm shopping. For groceries. I live here in Maywood." "You look suspicious," Jenkins snapped. "I've been watching you since you came in. Wandering around. Loitering." "I'm not loitering," David replied, a little firmer now. "I'm shopping, like everyone else." Jenkins stepped closer, his hand drifting near the butt of his gun. "Don't lie to me," he growled. "Where are you really from?" David's eyes narrowed. "I told you, I live here. This is my town." But Jenkins wasn't hearing him. His mind had already written the story, and in that story, David was the bad guy. "I want your ID," Jenkins demanded. "Now." "You don't have cause to ask me for that," David replied. "I haven't done anything wrong." That was it. That challenge, calm, informed, lawful, set something off. Jenkins's face flushed with anger. "You're resisting?" he shouted. "You think you can disrespect me?" David took a breath. He knew this feeling. The shift, the danger. And then, just like that, Jenkins pulled the gun. Shoppers screamed. The aisle emptied. And David Hayes, veteran FBI agent, found himself staring down the barrel of prejudice. David Hayes had been in dangerous situations before. He'd chased cartel leaders through foreign streets, stared down armed suspects in federal raids. But this was something different. This was home. This was a local supermarket. And the man pointing a gun at him wasn't a terrorist or a felon. It was a kid in a badge who saw David's skin color before he ever saw his humanity. David didn't flinch. Years in the Bureau had taught him how to move through chaos with discipline. But this chaos, this wasn't procedure. It was ignorance with a loaded weapon. He knew better than to argue now. Jenkins wasn't listening. He was reacting. And so David did the only thing that might save them both. He kept his hands raised and spoke slowly, each word clear. "Officer, I suggest you call your supervisor, right now. Or better yet, let me." Jenkins scoffed. "You think that scares me? Who are you calling? Your lawyer?" "No," David replied. "I'm calling Chief William Peterson." That name hit Jenkins like a slap. His sneer faltered. "The sheriff?" David nodded. "He's an old friend. Your boss." Still holding his phone in plain view, David used his thumb to unlock it. No sudden moves. No threats. Just quiet control. He found Bill's contact and tapped call. The line rang once, twice. Then, "Dave? What's up?" David's voice didn't shake. "Bill, I'm at the Fresh Mart, aisle 7. One of your officers has a gun on me. Says I look suspicious." And just like that, everything began to shift. When Chief William Peterson got off that phone, he didn't waste a second. No sirens, no radio chatter. Just grabbed his keys and drove like a man on a mission. You see, Bill and David had known each other since they were kids, grew up on the same dusty streets, played basketball together in high school, took different paths. One went federal, the other stayed local. But their respect for each other never faded. So when Bill heard the words gun, suspicious, and one of your officers, he knew exactly what was happening, and he wasn't going to let it stand. The automatic doors of the supermarket slid open, and in walked Chief Peterson. Plainclothes, badge on his belt, eyes scanning the store with military focus. It didn't take long to spot them. David, standing tall and calm despite the tension, and Jenkins, pale-faced, hands still hovering near his weapon like a boy who'd touched fire and didn't know what to do next. Bill didn't look at Jenkins, not at first. He walked straight to David. "You all right, Dave?" he asked, voice tight with worry. David nodded. "He hasn't pulled the trigger. That's about the only good news." Now Bill turned. His gaze landed hard on Jenkins. "Officer Jenkins, what are you doing?" Jenkins stammered. "He looks suspicious, sir. He refused to show ID. I thought..." You thought wrong, Bill snapped. That man is Special Agent David Hayes, Federal Bureau of Investigation. He's also my oldest friend. Silence, heavy and damning. Turn in your weapon, right now, then your badge and radio. You're suspended. Immediately. Jenkins froze, trembling. He handed it all over, his mouth opening to explain, to apologize. But no words came that could undo what he'd just done. The aisle, once filled with fear, now held something else entirely. Justice. Walking in with authority and a memory long enough to know who a man truly is. What happened in that supermarket aisle didn't end with an apology or a handshake. It triggered a full-scale investigation. Chief Peterson didn't just suspend Officer Jenkins. He walked straight into his office, picked up the phone, and called Internal Affairs himself. No delay, no cover-up. This wasn't just about his friend. It was about integrity, about the kind of department he wanted to lead. The Internal Affairs Division moved fast. They interviewed David Hayes first. Calm, precise, and professional. David gave a detailed account. No theatrics, just facts. Jenkins's tone, his language, the way he escalated, none of it followed protocol. Then came the footage. Maywood Fresh Mart had surveillance cameras. Plenty of them. No sound, but the body language spoke volumes. Jenkins storming in. David's stillness. The moment the gun came out, witnesses confirmed it. Customers, employees, strangers. All said the same thing. David wasn't doing anything wrong. Jenkins acted aggressively without cause. Then they sat Jenkins down. He tried to explain. Said he felt threatened. That David's refusal to show ID looked suspicious. But the timeline didn't hold. His story fell apart under the weight of evidence. The conclusion was as clear as it was damning. Excessive force, racial profiling, and a total failure of judgment. The disciplinary review board didn't waste time. The evidence was overwhelming, the misconduct undeniable. Chief Peterson sat at the head of the table, flanked by senior officers and the Internal Affairs lead. Jenkins was present, pale and sweating, his lawyer speaking more than he did. But no legal argument could erase the footage, the testimonies, or the shame. The board's decision came swift and clear. Officer Mark Jenkins was terminated immediately. No suspension, no probation, just a clean break. Badge stripped, career over. In that moment, justice wasn't abstract. It was real. And it stood on the side of what was right. For David Hayes, the moment passed, but the weight of it lingered. He had faced down criminals, gang leaders, and terrorists. But nothing shook him like having a gun pointed at him in his own hometown by someone who was supposed to protect it. It wasn't the danger that stung, it was the humiliation. The reminder that no matter your title or record, some folks will still only see your skin. He thought about what could have happened if he weren't calm, if he hadn't known the chief, if he'd been someone without a badge or a friend in high places. It stayed with him, not as anger, but as fuel, a reminder of why justice must be fair and why power must be held accountable. Because if it could happen to him, it could happen to anyone. And too often it does. David walked out of that store alive, but changed. Not bitter, just more resolved. Now I want you to sit with this story for a moment. This wasn't just about one officer or one man or even one town. It was about a system, one that too often gives a badge to boys not ready to carry the weight of it, one that allows bias to masquerade as suspicion, one that can turn an innocent man's Saturday into a near-death experience. David Hayes survived because he had a calm mind, a powerful voice, and a friend in the right place. But what if he didn't? What if the phone call had come a second too late? How many names have we read in headlines where there was no Chief Peterson to show up? No camera, no justice? This story isn't just a cautionary tale. It's a call to action, a reminder that accountability must be the foundation of trust, that a uniform doesn't excuse prejudice, that silence in the face of injustice is complicity. So I ask you, what needs to change? What kind of training, leadership, and courage must we demand from those sworn to protect us? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because if we want a better future, it starts with conversations like this one.